Recording, and
Oxford, and I will be the interviewer today, and I'm a student here at Caledonia High School. I am here with Steeves, and to start off, can you tell us what branch did you serve in?
I was in the Marine Corps.
Where did you go to school?
That was shortly after I graduated from the Ansonia High School in Ansonia, Connecticut.
When did you decide to join the Marines? At what age?
I graduated at age 17, and it was about that time that I also enlisted at age 17.
Were you married when you enlisted?
No.
Why did you decide to join?
Well, at that time, a lot of the younger men were joining because the World War II was in progress. And I guess you just knew that sooner or later you were going to be either drafted or enlisted.
Yeah.
And just decided to choose the branch of service I wanted to be in.
Was there a certain reason why you chose Marines, or?
No special reason. Just a few months earlier than my enlistment in the Marine Corps, two other friends and I wanted to join, or tried to join, the Air Force. And at that time, they were only taking 18-year-olds, so we couldn't qualify. So the other two friends of mine went into the Navy, and I went to the Marine Corps.
Do you recall any of your first days in service?
Oh, I recall a lot of the things in boot camp, which the Marine Corps has all Marines go through boot camp, about 8 or 10 weeks of basic training, and my training was at Parris Island, South Carolina.
Can you tell us about any of your experiences in boot camp?
Well, I do know that the tradition of the Marine drill instructor, or DI, being extremely strict was very true. They were strict, and they made you do everything by the book. And it was up early in the morning and doing your training exercises, and then to bed late at night, start all over again the next day.
Do you remember any of your instructors?
My drill instructors, there was a fellow named Herzog. I think he was a sergeant, I believe, and there was another one named Roth. He's also a sergeant, and another one named Jenkins. They were all drill instructors.
Was there anything special you did to get through boot camp, or?
Well, just did what you were told. If you did what you were told, you stayed out of trouble. No, the boot camp was rather uneventful, I guess. You did all your regular drilling and marching and rifle exercises, and then your rifle range and other gunnery type things. But I guess there was nothing special about it.
What was the food like?
There was lots of it. Sometimes it was all right, it was fine, and other times it wasn't too good. Of course, the cooks are cooking up the potatoes in 2 bushels at a time, and the vegetables about the same. There was great big pots, so you didn't expect to have it gourmet. But I do know while I was in boot camp, and that was 10 months, I grew 2 inches and gained 25 pounds.
Really?
So the food couldn't have been that bad.
What war did you serve in?
World War II.
Where did you go when you were serving?
Well, for the first few months after boot camp, And boot camp was started in October of '42 and was over about Christmas time of '42. I spent a few months here in the United States in a new type of service they had. They were classifying all the individual Marines who joined. So I was out interviewing with, there was a whole troop of us, a whole group of us that did this, and we went to the different camps here in the United States and interviewed them to find out what their civilian occupations were and what they were qualified for, and something new helped them get their assignment after boot camp. If they were cooks, or if they were truck drivers or so forth, they tried to place them where their civilian skills could be used.
Do you remember what it was like? Well, did you travel to any other countries, or did you stay in the U.S.?
After we completed this assignment, I went to what we call C School in Portsmouth, Virginia, and did some extra training there, and then was assigned to go aboard ship, one of the Navy ships.
What was your job or assignment?
Well, I was aboard a troop transport. We carried troops back and forth across the Atlantic, and it was actually manned by the Coast Guard and not by the regular Navy, U.S. Navy. It was manned by the Coast Guard sailors, and it was a rather large ship. It was a converted, what you would call a cruise liner. But they took all the comforts out of it, and it had a crew of about 700 permanent personnel, and we could carry up to about 7,500 soldiers or troops back and forth. We brought American troops from the United States to Europe and brought prisoners of war back from Europe to the United States.
Did you ever see any combat, or?
Well, not combat as you commonly know it, that you're laying in a foxhole and shooting at somebody that you can see a distance away. No, I didn't see any of that.
Do you have any memorable experiences while you were on the ship?
Well, I do remember, lots of things that happened. I don't think any of them were out of the ordinary. We had a couple of tremendously violent storms that the ship was in trouble at certain times. We did have some submarine sightings, but we did not run in a convoy. We ran as an individual ship because we were fast enough. The ship was fast enough that it would just be held up by the slower convoys. So we went all by ourselves. So we were vulnerable to whatever was out there.
Was your ship ever fired upon, or did you?
No, there was never anything fired upon. And we never fired a shot in anger, but we did certainly, I was part of the gun crew aboard the ship. We did gun crew work and MP work, MP for the prisoners of war and so forth. And we used to have our gunnery practice quite often.
Did you ever see any of the prisoners of war? Did you get to?
Oh yes, right there in and among them. And we did have some trouble occasionally with some of them. And most of the time they're pretty jovial.
Okay. How did you stay in touch with your family?
Well, it was just mail, and occasionally you would get a lead, because the ship went into the Atlantic coastal cities, and they would give you 1 day off or 2 days off. I was able to get home occasionally because I lived in Connecticut. But most of the time it was just by letter.
What was the food like on the ship?
The food was pretty good for the crew aboard the ship, and we had 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When the prisoners or the American troops were on there, that's when we had, say, 7,500 troops or prisoners. They were only fed twice a day because they just couldn't handle the volume.
Was there any entertainment at all on the ship, or?
Well, only what was, I'd say, spontaneous by the people who were on the ship. I mean, if there were soldiers who could sing or dance or play a guitar, they sometimes had their musical instruments with them. And because there was nothing to do all day long, they just had to sit there and wait till they got to their destination. There was often broke out entertainment, but it was all, as I say, spontaneous. There was no scheduled or planned entertainment.
Do you remember any humorous events or something that happened on the ship, or no?
Well, I do remember one comment when we were maybe just a couple of hours out of Boston, and there were this group of American sailors or soldiers were lined up along the rail looking out at the water, and one of the fellows says, "Boy, look at all that water." And the other fellow says, "And it's all not on top either." So they were thinking about the ocean, as probably most of the kids who were aboard the ship, soldiers, probably had never been on the ocean before.
Did you pull any pranks, or were there any pranks pulled on the ship, or?
Oh, I don't remember of any pranks.
Did you keep a personal diary?
I did keep a small notebook, but with very few details, mainly just the dates that we left port and the date that we arrived in port. I didn't record anything that happened, individual instances that happened while we were at sea on 2 occasions, coming back from Europe to the United States. We had a prisoner of war die, and we had to bury him. We buried him at sea with all military honors, and I participated in that, and it was in those ceremonies as firing the, we gave 3, what we call 3-gun salute, fired 3 rounds, and there was 8 of us in that. So we buried 2 different German soldiers at sea with full military honors. I do remember that. And then they lifted, they were bound up in canvas with some way they were weighted, and they were on a slab similar to this table, and they just lifted up the end and they slid off into the ocean, because we had no way of keeping their body aboard the ship.
How long were you in the service?
3 years and 3 months.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
Well, I don't specifically recall that day. I was discharged from Bainbridge, Maryland. That was a Navy base where they sent most of the Navy personnel and a lot of the Marine Corps. Of course, the Marine Corps was and still is a division of the Navy. And we went there probably a week or 10 days prior to being discharged. We got all of our papers and our travel orders, and if we had any pay due to us, they were paid at that time. And I got on a train and went home.
After your service, did you go work or did you go back to school?
Yes, it was immediately after that. When I came home, my brother had already found a job for me working on the mail, on the trains, sorting mail. And that was for the Christmas rush mail, because I got out in early December. So I worked on that. So I worked there 2-3 weeks. And the first week of February, I started going to college.
Did you make any close friendships while in the service?
Yes, made many very close friendships. None that I have, that I served with, that I have right at the moment, but for many years after my discharge, I kept in touch with a lot of the folks. And we did have a reunion on about 4 or 5 occasions in New York City, a reunion of all the permanent crew members in the ship.
Did you go to any of those?
Yes, I went to 2 or 3 of those, yes.
What career did you get into after the war?
Well, when I took business management in college, and that developed into becoming a salesman.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Well, probably did. I think prior to or during the time, or about the time I graduated from high school, I wasn't thinking about going to college. But I think from the people I met in the service, and the friendships I made, and I think at that time I decided that I should go to school. And so I think while I was in the service, I determined primarily from the people I met, that I should go to college. So when I got discharged, the first thing I did was try to enter school.
Is there anything you would like to add or want us to remember about your experience? An important life lesson or something?
No, I do remember I was skiing in Europe one time. This was probably in the earlier mid 1950s, and I was going up on the ski lift, and there was a German fellow sitting next to me, and we got talking and found out he was a doctor, and yes, he was in the war on the German side, of course. And after we talked for a few minutes, we determined that he was on our ship, on my ship, as a prisoner of war, and we took him from Europe to the United States. So we talked a little bit about that. Also, during one trip, we loaded a few hundred anyway. They were captured from the Germans, but they were Mongolians. And they were all very happy and jovial and always smiling and everything. And one of them said to me one time, "You feed us good, we fight for you." So they were troops they were Mongolians who the Russians had used on their Eastern Front. The Germans came, captured them there, put them in service in the German army, and we in turn captured them and were taking them from Europe to the United States. So to them, it was probably no big deal. They got hustled around again. So they said, heck, they'll work for us, they'll fight for us. They didn't really care, seeing that we're feeding them good.
That's funny. Well, thank you, Mr. Steeves, for sharing your recollections with us.
Well, it was a pleasure, and I hope you've had some very good interviews with some of the other people you've had here.